It was a quiet afternoon at the Ding family's home, just like any other day. But around 3 p.m., someone unexpected walked through their door and everything changed. What happened next was so terrible that it shocked the entire community. Hours went by before anyone knew something was wrong. When the police finally arrived, it was too late. The few clues left behind only made people wonder what really happened inside that house. Ang Xiangdu was born in 1958 in China. Little is known about his early life or family background, but from a young age, he showed a strong interest in business and traditional Chinese medicine. He eventually specialized in this field, and it was through his work that he met his future wife. The couple later had a son, though the details of his life remain private. By 1998, Ang Xiangdu decided to expand his horizons and, along with his family, relocated to the United Kingdom in search of a better future. Shortly after their arrival, Ang Xiangdu crossed paths with the Ding family, with whom he shared not only a cultural background but also a deep passion for traditional Chinese medicine. The Ding family consisted of Ji Feng, known as Jeff, his wife Helen Cui, and their daughters Xing, known as Nancy, and Alice. The Ding family had moved from China to the UK in the early 1990s, working tirelessly to build a better life. Both Jeff and Helen were university graduates with degrees in chemistry, and their daughters were born in Northampton in 1993 and 1999, respectively. Jeff worked as an engineering professor at the University of Manchester, while Helen was a Mandarin teacher at her daughter's school and also worked as a translator. She was known as a devoted mother and a hard worker. Their daughters, Nancy and Alice, were not only exceptional students, but also talented violinists who performed with the Northamptonshire Youth Orchestra, touring on several occasions. Nancy had just received an offer to study medicine at the University of Nottingham. Ang Xiangdu's professional relationship with the Ding family began in 1999 when they, along with a man named Paul, partnered to open a traditional Chinese medicine clinic in Birmingham. The business partnership initially appeared promising, with both families working hard to grow the clinic. However, over time, financial disagreements began to arise, leading to tensions within the partnership. The situation escalated when Jeff accused Ang Xiangdu of mismanaging the clinic's funds. Although Ang Xiangdu was briefly arrested, no charges were filed against him. Following this incident, Ang Xiangdu was forced out of the business, but he didn't back down. He decided to take legal action against the Dings, initiating a lengthy and bitter legal battle over the joint ownership of the clinic. The case dragged on for nearly a decade, filled with appeals and complex legal procedures. On April 28, 2011, Ang Xiangdu lost his final appeal. The court ordered him to refrain from liquidating his assets and to pay the Ding family around $116,000 in legal fees. Furious with the outcome, Ang Xiangdu's situation worsened as he had been in the process of negotiating the sale of a property, a deal that he now had to cancel because of the court's decision. Amid these mounting pressures on April 30th, his wife contacted the police, reporting his disappearance. She explained that her husband had left a farewell note written in Mandarin, expressing his best wishes and asking their son to take care of his mother. She also expressed concern for his safety, fearing he might have gone to confront the Ding family due to the ongoing financial and legal issues. Given the tense history between Anxiang Du and the Dings, local authorities in West Midlands contacted their counterparts in Northamptonshire, asking them to check on the Ding family's home. On the morning of May 1st, officers arrived at the Ding residence, but no one answered the door and the family's car was not present. Assuming they were not home, the officers left a card in the mailbox and departed. Later that day, police were called back to the Ding home by a neighbor who reported that something seemed wrong. He had not seen the family in 2 days, which struck him as unusual. He knocked on the door several times, but there was no response. When he peered through the kitchen window, he was horrified to see what appeared to be a leg lying in a pool of blood. The officers who returned to the scene were met with a gruesome sight: the bodies of all 4 Ding family members, who had been brutally stabbed. Investigators soon realized that they had visited the same house earlier in search of Anxiang Du following his wife's report of his disappearance. They also discovered that days before the murders, there had been a call to emergency services from the Ding residence. Unfortunately, due to a miscommunication regarding the call's location, officers were sent to the wrong address. After confirming that the occupants of that property were safe, the police had closed the case, thinking it might have been a prank call. While authorities were searching the wrong location, the Ding family was in greater danger than anyone realized. As investigators scoured the crime scene, they discovered a sharp object near the kitchen sink that did not match the other utensils in the home. Believing it could be the murder weapon, they sent it for analysis. Forensic teams also found fingerprints scattered throughout the house. The 4 bodies were transported to the forensic service, where the cause of death for each was confirmed to be stab wounds. Jeff had sustained 23 injuries, Helen 13, while Nancy had 11 wounds and Alice had 4. The medical examiner determined that the time of death was between 3 and 4 p.m. on April 29th. The community was devastated by the murders, as the Ding family was well loved by all. Friends, relatives, and the wider community gathered at the local church to bid their final farewells. Among those in attendance were Jeff's colleagues and the daughter's school friends. During the ceremony, Jeff's co-workers spoke of his dedication to engineering, while Nancy and Alice's teachers and friends remembered their talents, kindness, and academic dedication. In addition to the funeral, other memorials were held. At Alice's school, daffodils were planted in her honor. A commemorative plaque and a tree were also installed to remember her. Meanwhile, as friends and family tried to cope with their loss, detectives had already launched an intense investigation. Anxiang Du quickly became the prime suspect due to his long-standing legal dispute with the Ding family. The results from the fingerprints found at the crime scene matched Anxiang Du's, confirming his involvement. Initially, based on the farewell note he left his wife, officers believed he might have taken his own life after committing the murders. However, a thorough examination of digital evidence revealed multiple sightings of Anxiang Du throughout the UK, which is heavily monitored by surveillance cameras. Unbeknownst to him, every step he took before and after the crime was captured on camera. His missteps began when he left his house on the morning of April 29th. He hadn't considered the possibility of being tracked and took no precautions. His movements were traced back to that morning around 10 a.m. when he left his home to head to the store where he practiced Chinese medicine. His wife normally accompanied him, but that day she stayed home to watch the royal wedding, which was taking place. Aung San Suu drove to the train station, bought a ticket to Birmingham, and surveillance cameras recorded every moment. He spent little time at his shop, just enough to write a farewell note to his wife and retrieve a bag containing a knife. After that, he boarded a train to Birmingham and began his grim journey, switching to a bus at Northampton Station, arriving at 12:37 p.m. From there, he boarded another bus heading to the town where the Ding family lived. He appeared perfectly calm as he asked the bus driver for directions, though the driver mistakenly gave him the wrong address, forcing Aung San Suu to walk a considerable distance to reach the Ding residence, which he finally arrived at around 3 p.m., committing the brutal murder shortly after. Despite initial searches at airports and Eurostar services yielding no results, police later determined that Aung San Suu had driven to London and abandoned his car on a residential street. By 8 a.m. on April 30th, the day after the murders, he was already on a bus bound for Paris. From there, he slipped undetected into Spain and eventually made his way to the ferry port of Algeciras. Northamptonshire police launched the largest manhunt in the region's history, deploying over 240 officers to track down the suspect. Detectives spent 5,000 hours reviewing surveillance footage across the UK. They released security camera images from the day of the crime, hoping more witnesses might come forward to identify Aung San Suu, described as an older man in his 50s, small in stature and slightly hunched. The search expanded internationally with the help of Interpol, issuing alerts in 180 countries. Leads began trickling in, but it took time to process them all. Investigators questioned over 400 people and made 9 arrests, although none turned out to be the suspect. Some of those arrested were believed to have ties to Aung San Suu, though this proved to be false. The police offered a $13,200 reward, which was later increased to $33,000 for information leading to Aung San Suu's capture. Finally, after 14 months, authorities received a tip from a construction worker in Morocco who claimed to have seen a photograph of Aung San Suu in a local newspaper and believed he had worked alongside the fugitive. The man told officers that he and his co-workers had taken pity on Aung San Suu, often bringing him food and trying to assist him however they could. Upon learning this, UK police traveled to Spain and requested Aung San Suu's capture by Moroccan authorities. Aung San Suu was arrested on July 7, 2012, in a partially constructed apartment building in Tangier, where he had been sleeping on a makeshift bed and using a small gas stove to cook. When confronted with the evidence, he couldn't deny his involvement in the murders and confessed to everything. Although there was no formal extradition agreement between the UK and Morocco, British authorities submitted an official request to the Ministry of the Interior, and Aung San Suu was eventually flown to Heathrow Airport on February 20, 2013, to face justice for his crimes. On February 21st, he appeared before Northampton Magistrates Court, where he was charged with 4 counts of murder for the Ding family killings and remanded in custody awaiting trial. The capture of Aung San Suu marked a significant achievement for British law enforcement. However, this success was somewhat overshadowed by the Independent Police Complaints Commission's report, which highlighted the error made with Alice's emergency call on the day of the murders. According to the report, if the police had used more detailed controls and an available subscriber verification system, they could have identified the Ding family's correct address, allowing the emergency to be attended to within minutes. While police admitted their mistake, Forensic experts stated it was unlikely that the family could have been saved, given the severity of their injuries. However, they acknowledged that a prompt response might have led to Aung Seong-do being apprehended at the scene, as it was confirmed he remained in the house for nearly 5 hours after the murders, even taking a nap. After several months and delays due to scheduling changes, Aung Seong-do's trial, at age 55, began on November 12, 2013, at Northampton Crown Court. While Aung Seong-do did not deny killing the family, his defense team argued that the decade-long legal battle with his former business partners had left him suffering from severe depression, which impaired his judgment. They contended that he should be charged with manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility rather than murder as the prosecution sought. The defense centered on Aung Seong-do's mental and emotional state at the time of the killings, calling a forensic psychiatrist who had previously interviewed him. According to the psychiatrist, Aung Seong-do confessed to purchasing the sharp object months before the murders, intending to use it to end his own life due to his dire financial situation and deep depression. He recounted that while at his shop, he remembered the weapon in his bag and brought it with him on the trip from Birmingham to Northampton, planning to use it to force Jeff to pay the money he believed he was owed from their legal dispute. When asked if he intended to harm the family, Aung Seong-do responded that he might have had that thought. He insisted that he hadn't planned to kill them and wouldn't have gone to their house if he had. He also mentioned that if the Dings had apologized to him, the attack wouldn't have happened. In his confession, Aung Seong-do stated that once inside the house, he asked Jeff for money, but Jeff allegedly insulted him, mocked him, and ordered him to leave or he would call the police. Aung Seong-do then claimed that he pulled out the weapon and everything went black. He described how Jeff's voice and image became distorted, harsh, and ugly as he attacked him. The forensic expert explained this as evidence of Aung Seong-do entering a heightened state of excitement. According to Aung Seong-do, while attacking Jeff, he felt a hand pulling his arm and turned to find Helen, whom he also stabbed. He stated that he didn't remember how many times. Hearing a noise upstairs, Aung Seong-do said he went to investigate and found the daughters, whom he also stabbed. When recounting the murders of the girls, he broke down, saying he didn't know why he had done it, describing the act as a great sin. Afterward, Aung Seong-do claimed he fell asleep in the house, waking up only after it had gotten dark. Seeing a wallet and car keys nearby, he decided to flee. Initially, he considered finding his other former business partner to harm him as well, but after getting lost, he chose to escape instead. For the prosecution, this was a calculated plan set into motion after Aung Seong-do's legal options had run out. Prosecutors argued that his financial ruin was the catalyst for the murders, which were acts of cold-blooded revenge. They presented evidence, including fingerprints found at the scene, the weapon that Aung Seong-do had carried from his shop, and the farewell note he left for his wife, indicating premeditation. They also presented documents outlining the legal dispute and the debt Aung Seong-do owed the Dings, providing a motive for the killings. The jury was also shown autopsy reports revealing the brutality of the attacks. During the trial, they watched surveillance footage of Aung Seong-do casually walking through the bus station, asking for directions to the Dings neighborhood and clearly carrying a backpack containing the murder weapon. They also heard Alice's heartbreaking emergency call, which lasted only 20 seconds but moved several jurors to tears. Additionally, a school friend of Alice and a neighbor testified that they had seen a strange man near the Dings house on the day of the murders. The girl had told her father, who went to investigate, but seeing the man, assumed he was a family acquaintance and told his daughter to play away from the house. Neither noticed blood on the man's clothes, but they recalled that his beige jacket was buttoned up to the neck. Days later, after the crime was discovered, the girl told her father she had heard a scream that day, but hadn't realized at the time if it was a cry for help or just someone playing. After a 2-week trial on November 27th, the jury took just over 3 hours to find Anh Siang-du guilty on all 4 counts of murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 40 years. During sentencing, the judge remarked that the crimes were premeditated and motivated by revenge. Addressing Anh Siang-du, the judge said that by taking Jeff's life, he had killed the man he despised. The judge also spoke to the Ding family members, especially Helen's father and brother, who had traveled from China to follow the trial. Both expressed satisfaction with the verdict, though they acknowledged they would never recover from their loss. Anh Siang-du appealed his conviction in 2014, but it was rejected on June 4th of that year. The court upheld the original life sentence, citing the heinous nature of the crimes. Today, Anh Siang-du remains imprisoned at a high-security facility, where some of the UK's most dangerous criminals are held. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. On Saturday morning, August 19, 2017, Norberta Graywin watched her 22-year-old pregnant daughter, Savannah, struggle to climb the stairs to her third-floor neighbor's apartment. Savannah was 8 months pregnant, and the unusually hot August weather made it difficult for her to walk on her swollen legs. A few hours later, William Hone, the boyfriend of Brooke Cruz, the same neighbor who had invited Savannah over, climbed those same stairs. When he entered the apartment, he found Brooke scrubbing the bathroom, with Savannah's bloody and shredded body lying on the floor and a basin with a baby on top of the toilet lid. Seeing William, Brooke picked up the infant and handed it to him, saying, "This is our baby. This is our family. Please help me." In a shocking twist against any sense of morality, William assisted Brooke in cleaning up the blood, carrying bags of bloody towels and clothes out of the apartment, wrapping Savannah's body in bags secured with duct tape and ropes, and later disposing of the corpse. This heinous crime would soon send shockwaves across the entire nation. Savannah Graywin was born on August 9, 1995, in Belcourt, North Dakota. Her parents, Norberta and Joe Graywin, were Native Americans. She was a member of the Spirit Lake Sioux tribe. Shortly after Savannah's birth, the family moved to Fargo, but they returned to the reservation when she was 9 years old. Growing up in a vibrant, multicultural community, rich with colorful traditions, Savannah was immersed in nature and surrounded by the love of her family, which she valued above all else. This circle also included her grandparents and 3 siblings. Savannah was a horse enthusiast with a caring soul and was known as a committed student with average performance at Warwick Public High School. It was during her studies there that she met Ashton Matheny, who, like her, was a member of the Spirit Lake Sioux tribe. Their romance quickly blossomed, and by 2010 they were certain they had found the love of their lives. Though they dreamed of starting a home together, it was still early. However, Ashton's daily interactions with Savannah gave him a glimpse of her maternal instincts, as she adored children, particularly her nephews, whom she helped raise with great joy. Later, Savannah attended the Lakes Region State College and earned a degree as a certified nursing assistant, which led to employment at a senior care home. When the home was acquired by a large American company, she was transferred to Fargo in January 2016. To keep Savannah company, her entire family moved to Fargo, renting a modest ground-floor apartment. At that time, Ashton lived and worked in Minneapolis, about 270 miles away, making efforts to visit her regularly. During these visits, they discussed saving money to eventually move in together. In the apartment above Savannah's lived the couple Brooke and William. Brooke, born on July 4, 1979, had a troubled past despite growing up in a normal family in Florida. She was always a problematic young woman, and her relationships over the last 2 decades showed she was obsessive, had poorly controlled aggression, and a knack for intimidating people. At 17, in 1995, Brooke gave birth to a daughter from her relationship with Aaron Edwards. After becoming a mother, she worked as a pet store animal technician and a sales representative. However, one day she left the state without explanation, abandoning her husband and daughter. She then led a life on the fringes of the law, ending up imprisoned in Missouri for passing bad checks, and later in Texas for violating parole while working as a waitress in a Chinese restaurant. When her daughter turned 14, Brooke had some virtual conversations with her through a social network, maintaining brief contact, always behind Aaron's back, who hadn't heard from his ex-wife since she left. Throughout those years, Brooke had numerous lovers, which she boasted about until she remarried in 2006, this time to Carl Cruz, a carpenter from Minnesota. The couple had 2 children, and Brooke worked as Carl's administrative assistant. After 3 years, Brooke left for a period, and upon her return, Carl discovered she kept meticulous records and diaries detailing rather peculiar matters. The most shocking entries included detailed accounts of her various lovers and, more disturbingly, comprehensive reports on births and pregnancy terminations. Brooke kept meticulous notes that included a list of items needed to dispose of an unborn child: scissors, knives, tweezers, gloves, and oxytocin to induce contractions or cause a miscarriage. In 2010 and 2011, Brooke visited Australia, and during one of these trips, she suffered a spontaneous miscarriage. Doctors informed her that she could no longer have children. At the end of that year and the beginning of the next, Brooke was arrested for attacking her husband Carl with a knife. After regaining her freedom, she traveled back to Australia using a false identity. In a sworn statement during a custody battle for their 2 children, Carl wrote that she often fled from her problems, citing her trips to Australia as an example. Living life on her terms, Brooke met Andrew Murray, a chef from Katoomba, through a dating app. She quickly moved to the Blue Mountains and married him. However, Andrew soon discovered the countless lies surrounding his new wife, who had concealed her true identity, the fact that she had children and that she had been previously married. Despite her deceit, Andrew fell in love and decided to salvage their relationship. He stood by Brooke's side but soon grew uneasy about her obsession with real-life crimes. Brooke's fixation on criminal psychology and famous criminals became her sole reading material and favorite conversation topic. Initially, Andrew saw it as a peculiar but harmless hobby, but his perspective shifted when she began threatening him. Andrew became alarmed as her behavior grew increasingly aggressive. He suggested she return to the United States to care for her children, but this only worsened the situation. Brooke threatened to report him to the authorities and attempted to terrorize him, making him believe the police were after him. Exhausted by her delusions, Andrew went to the nearest police station, offering to cooperate with the authorities, as he had nothing to hide. The officers informed him there were no charges against him and suggested something was wrong with his wife. Andrew recounted the torment he endured, including threatening texts and immigration documents with false names. 6 months and 10 days passed from Brooke's arrival in Australia until her return to the United States in October 2012. Back in the U.S., Andrew maintained contact with Brooke for 2 weeks, contemplating a move to reconcile their marriage. However, he soon realized it was futile. Concerned by her erratic behavior, he alerted the Fargo police about the potential danger she posed. However, the police seemed indifferent to his warnings. Eventually, Andrew severed ties with Brooke and moved on. Back in the U.S., Brooke engaged in a prolonged custody battle with Carl for their 2 children. Around the same time, in late 2012, she began a relationship with William, a few years younger than her. Details about William's background are sparse, but it is known that he had recently completed a sentence for child neglect and abuse after bringing his son to the hospital in January 2011 with fractures near his right ear. The whirlwind romance led Brooke and William to move into an apartment in the same Fargo building where Savannah's family lived. William, blinded by what he believed to be an unbreakable love, dreamed of building a home and family with Brooke. Although Brooke initially reciprocated William's feelings, she hid her significant difficulties in conceiving. Meanwhile, Brooke faced the frustration of the court granting exclusive custody of her 2 children to her ex-husband Carl, while she only had visitation rights. Brooke made a living through temporary jobs, either in stores or various nursing homes. Over the months, her feelings toward William changed, as reflected in her diary. On December 23, 2014, she was diagnosed with anxiety at a Fargo medical center and was told she had post-traumatic stress disorder. To make matters worse, the following year, Brooke received a medical report about a growth in her gallbladder, darkening her mood even further. By that time, she wrote in her personal notes about a shadow that seemed to be consuming her true personality. Throughout that year and the next 2, their relationship oscillated between routine calm and occasional conflicts. Given the tragic events that later unfolded, investigators believe Brooke was likely seeking a solution to fulfill her desire to be a mother again and to prevent William from leaving her. While Brooke's life seemed to be spiraling into chaos, Savannah and her boyfriend Ashton's relationship appeared increasingly promising. At the beginning of 2017, they received the wonderful news that they were expecting their first child. The family's jubilant reaction to the news only heightened the couple's excitement for their bright future. Ashton doubled his efforts to achieve their long-awaited independence and marriage. In the fall of 2017, the doctor informed them they would have a girl, filling them with joy. Around that time, their upstairs neighbor, with whom Savannah's family had only a courteous relationship, approached the pregnant young woman with an invitation to smoke an illegal substance. Savannah refused and immediately informed her family about the absurd proposal, especially given her advanced pregnancy. From that moment, Norberta and Joe, Savannah's parents, viewed Brooke and her boyfriend William with suspicion. Saturday, August 19, 2017, began like any other day. At 22 and in her 8th month of pregnancy, Savannah looked radiant but understandably tired. She eagerly awaited her baby's due date. Shortly after noon, Brooke called Savannah to her apartment for help with sewing, explaining she needed her to try on a dress. Despite her distrust, Savannah agreed to help. Once inside, Brooke became hostile, accusing Savannah of mistreating her cats. At 1:30 p.m., Ashton sent a message to Savannah, which went unanswered. Suddenly, the two women engaged in a physical fight and Savannah fell, hitting her head. The impact left her unconscious and Brooke took the opportunity to fetch a knife. Using the sharp object, Brooke performed a cesarean section without medical knowledge, driven by her desire to steal the baby. In excruciating pain, Savannah tried to rise and saw in horror as Brooke removed her baby and placed her in a bathtub. Without proper medical attention, Savannah was severely weakened from profuse bleeding, and soon after, her heart stopped. Worried for his daughter and suspicious of the strange neighbor, Joe knocked on Brooke's door but received evasive responses. The details of William's involvement in the crime vary, with investigators debating two scenarios. In the first, William arrived after Savannah's tragic end. In the second, upon discovering the bloody scene, William tied a rope around Savannah's neck to ensure she had no signs of life. According to the reconstruction of events, what is certain is that Brooke showed the newborn to William, declaring they finally had a family. William then cleaned the crime scene, gathering all evidence including shoes and blood-stained towels, and disposed of them far away. The couple discarded Savannah's body in the Red River on the outskirts of Fargo, near the Minnesota border. Meanwhile, Savannah's family, desperate after countless unanswered calls to her phone, reported her disappearance that same Saturday afternoon. Officers arrived at their home at 5 p.m. and, after a brief conversation with Norberta and Joe, learned where Savannah was last seen. They immediately went upstairs and knocked on Brooke and William's door. The initial visit by the police to the apartment revealed nothing suspicious, so they left. However, a few hours later, still with no news of Savannah's whereabouts, the officers returned to Brooke and William's apartment for further questioning. Meanwhile, investigators interviewed Ashton, whose alibi was corroborated the next day. Consequently, on Sunday, August 20, 2017, the police visited the couple's residence for the third time. Despite Brooke and William sticking to their story and no incriminating evidence being found, the officers left empty-handed once again. Ashton took matters into his own hands, dedicating every moment to informing locals about the case and asking for their help in finding Savannah. During those anguished hours, the soon-to-be father couldn't stop replaying his last conversation with his girlfriend in his mind, hoping to find a logical explanation for her mysterious disappearance. Determined to follow the only viable lead, the timeline of events, the police took William to the station for an interview. He did everything he could to handle the situation. Meanwhile, back home, both he and Brooke had to care for the newborn, which involved buying necessities for feeding and clothing her. They also began informing their acquaintances that they had become parents, news that quickly reached the investigating officers. Suspecting that Savannah might be held captive somewhere, the police started tailing the couple. Finally, on Tuesday, August 22, 2017, the police raided Brooke and William's apartment. After moving the sofa that had been placed against the door to block entry, they found a chaotic scene. On the bed, they discovered a newborn baby, just a few days old, who was immediately taken to the emergency room. Though Brooke refused to answer the police's questions, both she and William were taken to the station. There, William revealed that when he arrived home that Saturday, Brooke was holding the baby and frantically trying to clean up the scene. his disclosures began to unravel the gruesome story. On Thursday, August 24, 2017, Brooke and William were formally arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and providing false information to the police. Fortunately, the baby was in good health. Genetic tests would later provide crucial evidence against those who took Savannah's life. 3 days later, Savannah's lifeless body was found on the banks of the Red River, wrapped in plastic and adhesive tape. The subsequent autopsy revealed she had been a victim of homicidal violence, though it was unclear whether she died from blood loss or airway obstruction. Genetic tests confirmed that the baby was indeed Savannah's. The child was placed under the care of the county social services and later given the name her biological parents had chosen. Ashton shared an adorable photo of himself holding the baby on social media, a moment of overwhelming joy amidst the tragedy. A candlelight vigil in memory of Savannah was held on the evening of Wednesday, September 6, 2017. The following morning, Thursday, September 7, 2017, a funeral service took place at First Assembly Church. The funeral ceremony was open to the public, drawing nearly 1,000 mourners who joined Savannah's family and friends to pay their final respects amidst tears. Native American songs filled the air as Savannah, remembered as a kind and loving girl, was honored. The town's mayor offered words in memory of the late mother. Many attendees wore red shirts symbolizing not only Savannah's loss, but also the countless other Indigenous women who had met similar fates. After the service, a horse-drawn carriage carried Savannah's casket to the cemetery, followed by 10 horses, one of which was riderless. Only Savannah's family attended the burial, placing various items on her coffin according to their tribal beliefs to accompany her on her journey to the afterlife. In later interviews, Ashton shared that he suffered from recurring nightmares following the tragic events. However, the support from friends and the community was overwhelming. One significant gesture was the creation of a fundraising account in his and his baby's names to help cover essential expenses. Granted legal custody of the baby, Ashton focused on her well-being. With the help of Savannah's parents, he spent his days bathing, feeding, and changing the baby, ensuring she had everything she needed. As he later shared with the media, Ashton realized he had become both father and mother. Brooke's trial began in early December 2017 at the Fargo courthouse. At 6 months old, Savannah's baby was seen in her father's arms during the hearings, where Ashton learned in detail the twisted circumstances of Savannah's death. The prosecutor emphasized Savannah's baby took her first breath as her mother took her last, seeking a life sentence without parole for Brooke, whom she called dangerous and heartless. Brooke's attorney requested life with the possibility of parole, arguing that in his 38-year career, he believed everyone could change, pointing to Brooke's acceptance of responsibility. In February 2018, at the sentencing hearing, moments before the judge announced the verdict, Brooke apologized to Savannah's family for the pain she had caused. She acknowledged there was no excuse or way to undo her actions. Ultimately, Brooke was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for the crime against Savannah. William, having accepted a plea deal and cooperated fully with the investigation, avoided charges of conspiracy to commit murder and to take the baby. Instead, he faced lesser charges of conspiracy to kidnap the baby and providing false information to investigators. However, the judge designated William as a particularly dangerous offender due to his prior conviction for child neglect and abuse, increasing his sentencing possibilities from 20 years to life imprisonment. During his sentencing hearing, William expressed deep remorse. However, during the victim impact statement, Savannah's mother, expressed that William's supposed remorse was insufficient. She urged the judge to apply the full weight of the law, condemning Williams and his girlfriend's actions as atrocious and twisted. The judge heeded her plea, sentencing 33-year-old William to life imprisonment as a particularly dangerous offender. Despite this, he was given the possibility of parole. William later appealed his status as a particularly dangerous offender, and in August 2019, the North Dakota Supreme Court ruled that the designation was inappropriate. Consequently, a new sentencing was ordered. The second hearing took place on October 7, 2019. Although the judge disagreed with the decision, he aimed to be as severe as possible, sentencing William to 20 years in prison. Beyond the court and complex judicial processes, Savannah's loved ones strove to regain a sense of normalcy, especially because they believed that Savannah's baby deserved a full life, not one overshadowed by grief. For Ashton, every moment with his daughter was particularly precious after surviving such a nightmare. After enduring such a stressful and painful time, Ashton told the press he felt relieved that life for both of them had become much more tranquil and stable. The young father devoted himself to studying business administration at a local community college. Given their financial constraints, Ashton was looking for a better-paying job alongside his obligations. He was very grateful for the support from the fundraising account, using the money to buy a vehicle and renovate their modest home. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. Stephanie Scott was a well-known and highly respected high school teacher from New South Wales, Australia. On Easter Sunday in 2015, she had gone to school to prepare for her upcoming classes. Later that afternoon, as she was leaving, she was ambushed from behind and forced into a storage closet where a grisly, callous, and disturbing crime unfolded. But the most shocking part was yet to come. As police soon discovered, the crime hit much closer to home than anyone could have anticipated. Evidence revealed that Stephanie knew her attacker. This heartbreaking, stomach-churning story is one of the most cold and heartless crimes I've ever covered here on Unreal True Crime. Stephanie Scott was born on October 14, 1988, in Sydney, Australia. She was the second youngest of 5 children born to Marilyn and Robert Scott, affectionately known as Bob. The family made their home in Canawindra, a small town with around 2,000 residents located in the central western region of New South Wales. Growing up in the serene and peaceful surroundings of their family farm, Stephanie and her siblings formed a close-knit, loving family that cherished the simple joys of life. Stephanie was an extraordinary child raised in a healthy, joyful environment brimming with love. She was not only beautiful and intelligent, but also possessed a kind, gentle, and compassionate personality. Known for her sense of humor, Stephanie loved playing pranks. Her loved ones described her as noble, affectionate, and down-to-earth, always willing to lend a helping hand. Putting others before herself was a fundamental aspect of her character. With her infectious joy and radiant smile, Stephanie could brighten anyone's day. Even from a young age, she displayed wisdom beyond her years, listening without judgment and offering the best advice. Her empathy and ability to inspire were remarkable, and she despised cruelty, especially towards children and animals. As a teenager with a keen sense of fashion, she became a role model for her peers. After finishing primary school, Stephanie attended the high school where her father worked. It was there that she met Aaron Leeson Woolley, a charming classmate who shared her passion for football. They quickly became friends and both took part-time jobs at a local supermarket. Spending so much time together, Aaron became like a member of the Scott family. Upon graduating from high school, Stephanie chose to follow in her father's footsteps and pursue a career in education. Aaron supported her decision, even though it meant she would have to move to Wagga Wagga for university. The distance made them realize their true feelings for each other. In May 2010, during Aaron's 21st birthday party, their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. Despite the physical distance, they maintained their bond through frequent visits, shared holidays, and constant communication via phone and text. Their relationship grew stronger with each passing day, and everyone believed they were meant to be together. After Stephanie graduated and returned home, she received a job offer in another town. The couple moved to Leeton, a small agricultural town in New South Wales. Before they left, Marilyn, proud of her daughter's achievements, gifted Stephanie a graduation ring. Once settled in their new home, Stephanie began her career teaching English and drama at Leeton High School. She was incredibly happy because teaching was undoubtedly her true passion. Her dedication to each student was evident. She didn't just impart knowledge but also took a genuine interest in their feelings and thoughts. Stephanie became a mentor to many of them, her remarkable personality making her very popular among the students. She also earned the admiration and respect of her colleagues. Her ever-present smile reminded everyone that fulfilling one's vocation was a key to happiness. A joyous event took place on April 11, 2014. Stephanie and Aaron got engaged. They set their wedding date for exactly a year later. Stephanie poured her heart into planning their wedding, meticulously attending to every detail to ensure their guests would enjoy the day as much as she would. Aaron supported her every step of the way, even taking dance classes with her so their first dance as a married couple would be perfect. They also made reservations for their honeymoon in Fiji, convinced it was the most romantic destination for any couple in love. They never imagined their plans would be tragically cut short. On March 2, 2015, a new employee joined the company contracted to clean the school where Stephanie worked. His name was Vincent Stanford, a 24-year-old born on December 21, 1990, in Tasmania. Vincent had an identical twin named Marcus. When the twins were 3, the family moved to the Netherlands. His father eventually returned to Australia and lost contact with them, leaving his mother to raise the children alone. Vincent's childhood was typical, but as he grew, he became increasingly withdrawn and had severe difficulties socializing. His behavior problems at school escalated, earning him the nickname Psycho due to his violent outbursts. According to later reports, Vincent began having homicidal thoughts around the age of 7 or 8. At 12, he attacked his teacher, attempting to strangle her. As a result, he was expelled and sent to a behavior school for socially maladjusted children. Later, he was admitted to a psychiatric center for teenagers, where he was diagnosed with autism and oppositional defiant disorder. This diagnosis indicated his challenges in forming friendships and relationships. After his release, Vincent tried to enroll in university and join the military, but both attempts were unsuccessful. In 2013, he returned to Australia with his mother and siblings. Vincent appeared quiet and reserved, with his distinct Dutch accent, and had no friends or social contacts. He found the company of others stressful and cycled through various jobs before being hired by the cleaning company servicing Stephanie's school. Vincent's troubling behavior soon resurfaced. Unbeknownst to anyone, he began watching female students during lunch and secretly in the bathrooms. He fixated on a 12-year-old girl, stalking her both inside and outside school, taking daily photographs and documenting her movements in a notebook. He seemed to be planning to abduct her. It was later discovered that he also stalked 2 women working in nearby shops. By Easter week 2015, less than a week before Stephanie and Aaron's wedding, the couple was invited to a party in their hometown. Stephanie couldn't travel because she needed to prepare lessons for her substitute teacher and finalize a few details for the reception. Aaron didn't want to go without her but wanted to see his parents and best friend before the wedding. On Friday, April 3rd at 12:30 p.m., Aaron left for his hometown, unaware that it would be the last time he would see the woman he was about to marry. The young couple kept in touch through calls and text messages. Aaron attended the Saturday night party and then stayed at his parents' house. He and his fiancée spoke on the phone, saying their goodnights around 10:30 p.m. On the morning of Sunday, April 5th, 2015, Stephanie left her home to go to the school. While on her way, she sent a text to Aaron detailing her plans for the day. Around 11 a.m., she parked her red Mazda 3 next to the school. Then, she walked a few blocks to pick up the school keys from a colleague who lived nearby. Her co-worker accompanied her back to the school and watched as she entered and locked the front door behind her. She went up to the second floor to the English teacher's lounge, where she sat down to work on her computer. Unexpectedly, Vincent was also in the building. Hearing noises, he passed by the lounge and saw Stephanie for the first time. Despite working there for over a month, he had never met her and had no idea she would be there. As he later confessed, upon seeing her, he felt an overwhelming urge to take her life. Vincent went home to retrieve what he called his assault kit, which consisted of a bottle of lubricant erectile dysfunction pills, several condoms, and some flexible handcuffs. It took him about 10 minutes to go and return. Upon arriving back at the school, he stayed downstairs, waiting for Stephanie to come out. Around 1 p.m., Stephanie sent an email to the bus driver who would transport the wedding guests from the ceremony to the reception hall, confirming that she had made the final payment to secure the service. An hour later, she finished her work, turned off her laptop, and packed up to leave. She retraced her steps back to the main entrance, walking down the corridor towards the large metal gate. Almost there, she encountered Vincent. She smiled and wished him a happy Easter. As she was taking her keys out of her bag, Vincent grabbed her from behind and covered her mouth with his hand. Terrified, the 26-year-old tried to scream for help and kicked and scratched, trying to escape. But he overpowered her and dragged her down the hallway into a dark photo development room. Once inside, Stephanie tried to flee, but Vincent violently pushed her to the floor. He used his left arm to pin her down by her throat and began savagely punching her face with his right fist for almost a minute, repeatedly, until she was unconscious. He then put on a condom and sexually assaulted her. Afterward, he took out a knife and inflicted several severe wounds to her neck. Once he was sure Stephanie was no longer breathing, he left the knife on the floor and went home to eat lunch. At home, he made himself a cheese sandwich and drank some coffee. Later, he returned to the school to clean the scene. Vincent washed the knife in the maintenance room and collected the items that had fallen from Stephanie in the hallway, including her car keys. He then moved her Mazda to the other side of the school. Returning to Stephanie, he placed yellow adhesive tape around her neck to contain the bleeding. Vincent placed a plastic sheet in the trunk of the car and put Stephanie's body on top. He closed the vehicle and re-entered the building, where he used a high-pressure cleaner to wash the crime scene. By then, it was past 3 p.m. Vincent left the school and drove Stephanie's car to his home, parking it behind a large shed in his backyard. He then walked back to the school to retrieve his white Toyota Hilux. Upon arrival, Vincent removed the floorboards from the darkroom, which were soaked with the young woman's bodily fluids. He loaded the wooden planks into his vehicle and returned home. Meanwhile, Aaron tried calling his fiancée, but she didn't answer. He found it odd but thought she might be deeply focused on her work or that her phone was on silent or out of battery. Before leaving his parents' house, he sent a text to confirm if they would go out for dinner when he got back, but received no reply. By around 7:30 p.m., Aaron arrived at the home they shared, surprised to find neither Stephanie nor her car there. His concern grew when she still hadn't responded to his messages. He decided to drive around town to look for her, checking at the high school, friends' houses, and the main street, but saw no sign of her car. Although increasingly worried, he thought pre-wedding nerves might have driven her to stay elsewhere for the night, so he returned home and tried to sleep. In the early hours of Monday, April 6th, Aaron woke up frequently at every noise, hoping Stephanie had returned. Meanwhile, Vincent had driven Stephanie's car, with her body in the trunk, to Cocopara National Park. Once there, he placed her on the ground, removed her clothes, and covered her with branches. He then doused her with gasoline and set her on fire. Vincent gathered the removed clothes, the car's sun visor, and the plastic sheet used to cover the trunk, and placed them in a bag. Before leaving, he picked up the gasoline canister. Vincent returned home, left the items in the shed, changed his clothes, and abandoned Stephanie's car near an irrigation canal. After 7:30 a.m., he drove around town, disposing of Stephanie's belongings in various trash bins along the main street and near a sports complex. However, he kept her driver's license and engagement and graduation rings. Meanwhile, Aaron had risen early to send another message to his girlfriend but received no response. He started calling friends and the Scott family, but no one had heard from Stephanie. By then, Aaron was convinced something was wrong and went to the police station to report his fiancée missing. The news caused a stir in the peaceful community, which quickly mobilized to search for her. The police immediately launched an operation and triangulated Stephanie's cell phone, but it was either turned off or not functioning. Checking her bank accounts revealed the last transaction occurred on Easter Saturday, and there were no recent social media posts or interactions. When detectives interviewed Stephanie's family, they were seriously concerned and made it clear she wouldn't disappear voluntarily, convinced something terrible had happened. At 8 a.m. on April 7, 2015, the police requested information via social media and the press. The case quickly garnered extensive coverage. A distraught Aaron appeared on television, pleading for his fiancée to call him. Detectives visited the high school searching for clues and inspected Stephanie's classroom. They checked the alarm system to confirm the time she had deactivated and reactivated it, establishing the duration she had been on the premises. Forensic services and a canine unit also arrived to search for evidence not immediately visible. By late Tuesday afternoon, A large group of Stephanie's family and friends gathered, desperate to enter the school, fearing she might be held captive on the grounds. The police convinced them not to force entry. It was then that a neighbor mentioned seeing Vincent, the school cleaner, working on Easter Sunday with his vehicle parked at the institution. Officers went to his house and, when questioned, Vincent admitted being at the school briefly to take out the trash. He denied knowing or seeing Stephanie there and wished them luck in their search, a comment that aroused suspicion in the detectives. The next day, April 8th, they decided to question him again. Since Vincent wasn't home, the police asked his mother to tell her son to contact them. Vincent had gone to the post office to mail a package containing Stephanie's rings and license to his brother. He then texted his brother to ask him to keep the package safe. By around 11 a.m., Vincent arrived at the police station and gave a statement to the detectives. He claimed he had been cleaning the school all weekend and hadn't seen anyone else there, except for some skateboarders who were later identified and interviewed. He added that he went to a supermarket afterward to buy food. This detail caught the officers' attention since they knew the name store was closed on Sundays. They contacted the store manager, who confirmed they were closed for Easter. An hour later, a special task force was activated to investigate the suspicious disappearance of the teacher. The team was composed of specialized agents and was implemented when cases became complex in Australia. The first thing the agents did was interview Vincent's employer, who told them that all his workers had time off for Easter, so Vincent shouldn't have been at the school those days. Detectives then called Vincent to confirm the supermarket story. He repeated his false account, making him the prime suspect. At 6 p.m., the detectives arrived at Vincent's residence. He wasn't there, but his mother and brother were. His mother consented to a search of the house. In Vincent's room, they found a set of keys on a red and white cord matching the description of the keys given to Stephanie by her colleague to access the school. They also found an empty condom wrapper and some unopened ones on the floor. Outside, they noticed fresh tire tracks leading from the front of the house to the backyard that didn't match Vincent's truck. At the end of the tracks, they found a used condom and yellow tape, prompting the agents to declare the area a crime scene. Vincent's family was escorted to the police station. Meanwhile, Vincent had returned to the location where he had abandoned Stephanie's body, taking photos. As he later revealed in an interview, he returned to see if she was still there or if wild animals had taken her. Unbeknownst to him, a group of Boy Scouts camping in the park had taken a photo at 5:34 p.m. that day, which would later be crucial. When Vincent returned home, he told the detectives he had been taking photos. A digital camera was on the passenger seat of his truck, and in the back were wooden planks with reddish stains. The vehicle was confiscated, and detectives asked Vincent to accompany them to the police station. Upon turning on the camera, the investigators saw the first image, burnt human remains in a bush, resembling a woman's body. At the station, Vincent continued denying any contact with Stephanie or her car. Although not yet under arrest, the conversation was recorded with his consent. They questioned Vincent about the various scratches on his face and right forearm. He explained that a week prior, he had hit his head and collided with tree branches. As for the photos found on his camera, Vincent claimed they were from a horror movie he downloaded from the internet because he found them amusing. After the interview, Vincent was placed under arrest and given the opportunity to speak with a lawyer, which he declined. However, he agreed to undergo several forensic tests, including a medical examination of his injuries with photographs and measurements, as well as nail scrapings and a mouth swab for DNA analysis. Once the results were in, the investigators had no doubt. Vincent was charged with the crime against Stephanie Scott, denied bail, and taken to jail. When Vincent's brother learned of his brother's arrest, he opened the package and found Stephanie's driver's license and photographed it before burning it. He kept the rings, awaiting further instructions from Vincent. The detectives analyzed Vincent's truck. The GPS system had recorded a trip to Cocopara National Park, and material found on the wheel arches indicated the vehicle had traveled on a gravel or dirt road. Additionally, a closed condom and a cell phone were discovered under the passenger seat. The stains on the wooden planks recovered from the truck were confirmed to be biological fluids matching Stephanie's genetic profile. On the morning of April 9, 2015, the police notified the Scott family of Vincent's arrest and the charges against him, including the photos found on his camera. They withheld the fact that the remains were burnt. However, the information about the burned body leaked to the national media, devastating Stephanie's loved ones. That same day, at 9:30 a.m., a car matching the description of Stephanie's car was found. The area was declared a crime scene, and the vehicle was taken for forensic analysis. Specialists found traces of fluids in the trunk and on the rear bumper, which matched Stephanie's DNA. There were also traces of Vincent's genetic code. A subsequent thorough forensic examination of the Stanford residence uncovered the plastic used to cover the Mazda's trunk and an empty gasoline can behind the shed. Inside, they found Stephanie's keys, a red bra identified by her family, and the sharp weapon used to kill her. In a closet, they discovered a bottle of lubricant, several condoms, and flexible handcuffs, all stained with the victim's blood. They seized a computer from Vincent's bedroom, which was later examined by the Electronic Evidence Unit. The hard drive contained numerous images of crimes, sexual assaults, and other disturbing content involving animals, as well as bomb-making materials and surveillance photos and videos of women and students. They also found that Vincent had spent the early hours of April 5th searching the internet for information about knives and had previously researched about abducting women and teachers. Additionally, he had looked into leg cuffs and made an online purchase of flexible handcuffs and a dagger-style knife. At 8 a.m. on April 10, 2015, a witness came forward at the police station, reporting that around 4 p.m. on Monday, they saw a vehicle resembling Vincent's parked by the main irrigation canal. The man said he saw someone throw a laptop into the water before running back to the truck and leaving. The next day, police divers retrieved the device. Forensic technology specialists dried it quickly, downloaded its contents, and confirmed it belonged to Stephanie. Despite police efforts, Stephanie's body remained missing. News outlets published photos of Vincent's vehicle, urging anyone with information to contact the police. The scouts who had been in Cocopara National Park on April 8th responded to this call. A photograph taken by one of the boys showed Vincent driving his white truck, leaving the area where he had allegedly abandoned Stephanie's body. Thanks to this lead, near 5 p.m. on April 10th, the day before Stephanie's scheduled wedding, police found charred human remains in a narrow scrubland strip in the park, near a road. Upon analysis, the body was identified as that of the missing teacher. On what should have been Stephanie and Aaron's wedding day, April 11, 2015, Vincent requested to speak with the lead investigator. Vincent finally confessed to the crime, stating that he had gone a bit crazy and felt an overwhelming urge to take Stephanie's life. He admitted to hitting her about 40 times but offered no reason or emotion behind his actions, suggesting his mental problems had resurfaced. When asked why he had a knife with him, Vincent explained that he kept it in the cleaning room as a tool he had previously used to open something. On April 13, 2015, An autopsy revealed that Stephanie died from blunt force trauma to the head. She had hematomas on the right side of her face, a small laceration on her eyebrow, a fractured nose, and an eye injury consistent with severe impact. Additionally, there were 2 knife wounds on the right side of her neck, with the right internal jugular vein being severed, though no associated hemorrhage was found along the cut's path. On April 21st, Vincent was interviewed again to clarify the details of his confession and to locate Stephanie's rings. Vincent revealed that his brother Marcus had helped with the rings. The next day, after 1 p.m., Stephanie's funeral was held, attended by over 1,500 people, including family, friends, students, and community members. They gathered at the location where she was supposed to marry Aaron. Many wore black with a touch of yellow. Townspeople tied yellow ribbons to trees along the route to the funeral. Stephanie's family and friends shared beautiful tributes about her reflective nature and care for others. On May 9, 2015, Vincent called his twin brother Marcus, asking him to sell the rings. Marcus, in an act he later described as misguided loyalty, pawned them for $705 in Adelaide. In a subsequent phone call, Vincent instructed Marcus to buy a plane ticket to visit him in jail and give the rest of the money to their mother. Marcus followed these instructions and visited Vincent on May 20th. 2 days later, Marcus was interviewed by the police. He denied receiving any packages from his brother and had deleted their text messages. Due to the case's uproar, Marcus and his father decided to move to a different city, where Marcus started working on a flower farm. However, on June 9th, authorities visited Marcus's new home. During the search, they seized a camera, a pawn shop receipt, and his mobile phone. Marcus was arrested and taken to New South Wales, charged as an accessory to murder, and placed in the Unitary Correctional Facility. On August 5th, during questioning, Marcus stated he never understood why Vincent sent him Stephanie's belongings, expressing confusion and anger. 7 months later, on March 31, 2016, Marcus pleaded guilty. On July 19, 2016, it was Vincent's turn to appear before the same court, where he pled guilty to aggravated sexual assault and murder. Psychological evaluations revealed a pattern of social and interpersonal deficits, including an inability to experience emotions, extreme detachment, and indifference to others. It was clear that he harbored violent thoughts, which, when stressed, could reach an intolerable level. He scored high on scales of perversion and violence, though his psychopathy tendencies were low. According to the presented tests, Vincent told the forensic psychologist that being around people was stressful and unpleasant for him. He claimed the crime was not premeditated and that, while he did not enjoy committing it, doing so helped reduce his overall tension and overwhelming need to kill the young woman. A month later, on August 24, 2016, Marcus was sentenced to 15 months without parole for being an accessory to his brother after the crime. The judge described his actions as absolutely atrocious, shameful, and unforgivable, noting that, despite being driven by misguided loyalty to his brother, Marcus had abandoned morality and human decency in favor of a criminal's interests. Marcus's sentence was retroactive to his arrest, so he was released on September 9th of the same year. Despite nearly 60,000 people signing an online petition to appeal his sentence as insufficient, Marcus expressed regret for helping his brother and publicly apologized, assuring he no longer wanted anything to do with Vincent. He returned to his father's home, but they had to move due to local hostility. They relocated to a rural town in New South Wales, keeping a low profile. A month later, on October 10, 2016, court sessions resumed for Vincent's sentencing. Stephanie's mother took the stand to speak about the emotional impact of the crime. One of her most poignant statements was lamenting that her daughter spent her wedding day in a morgue, without vows or a wedding dance. The video of Vincent's police confession from April 2015 was then shown. As everyone listened in shock, Vincent sat with his head down. Finally, on October 12, 2016, the judge announced the sentence. In his verdict, the judge described Vincent's behavior as deeply disturbing, noting his fluctuations between despair and unmet expectations, leading to deep-seated hatred. He declared the case fell within the worst category and left no doubt about Vincent's guilt. Vincent Stanford was sentenced to 15 years without parole for aggravated sexual assault and life imprisonment for the murder of Stephanie Scott. Upon the verdict's announcement, the public showed support. Just 2 weeks after Vincent's sentencing, another tragedy struck the Scott family. On October 31, 2016, while chopping trees, Bob lost his life when a trunk fell on him at the family farm. In 2018, the Scott family initiated legal action against the New South Wales Department of Education and the cleaning company that employed Vincent, citing ongoing nervous shock, a legal term for permanent psychiatric distress following a relative's death. In June 2020, both parties reached an out-of-court settlement with details kept confidential, and the Scotts received compensation. Aaron managed to rebuild his life. 5 years after the tragedy, on July 7, 2020, he announced his engagement on social media. He got married in December of that year and 2 years later welcomed a daughter named Sienna. Many consider Stephanie Scott's murder one of the most heinous crimes in recent Australian history. Such a cruel and inhuman act shook the entire country. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. October 15, 1981. A serene evening turned into a nightmare with a violent attack. The air was thick with tension as a young life was brutally cut short. Her cries for help echoed. The woman's pantyhose were tightly wrapped around her neck, a grotesque symbol of the ferocity of the assault. She was sexually assaulted, and her struggle for life was a desperate one. Her death was agonizingly slow. In the years that followed, Sasha Stone, who lost her mother at the age of 4, embarked on a long and arduous search for answers. Sonia Carmen Hirac was born on May 27, 1951, in Quebec, eastern Canada. Little is known about her early life and home environment. The first notable events in her life trace back to her teenage years when she met David in Montreal. The two fell deeply in love, according to stories from that time. When David decided to move to California, USA in 1972, Sonia followed him. Despite her adventurous spirit, Sonia had other dreams. She longed to marry and start a family. Their differing life goals eventually led to the end of their romantic relationship, but they remained friends. A few months later, another man entered Sonia's life, Michael. Sonia's happiness on her wedding day to Michael was captured in photographs, her radiant smile reflecting her joy. Soon after, their happiness seemed complete with the birth of their first child, Sasha, in 1977. David, maintaining his close friendship with Sonia, was named Sasha's godfather. Sonia was recognized for her sewing skills and independent entrepreneurial spirit. However, not everything was rosy. After giving birth, she struggled with postpartum depression, which worsened when Michael faced career difficulties. Their marriage began to strain, with David witnessing the tension between Sonia and Michael. To clear her mind, Sonia took Sasha and moved to Carmel, a picturesque community in Northern California known for its white sandy beaches, artistic vibe, and stunning views. Although Sonia had not yet made any drastic decisions about her marriage, she considered divorce. In Carmel, her long hair, striking beauty, and charisma made her a well-known figure. She also became notable for driving a Mercedes-Benz convertible. Her career took a positive turn when she became a rising star at Levi Strauss, working as a sales representative. In Carmel, Sonia formed a genuine friendship with another young mother, Caroline McBride. Their daughters attended the same school, which promoted children's freedom and creativity. This nurturing environment allowed Sasha and her friend to grow up happily. Around this time, a new family moved in across the street from Sonia and Sasha. The family consisted of Jean and Walter and their son, Michael Scott, known as Scott. Scott, 25, was studying photography at the Monterey Peninsula Community College. His volatile personality and poor manners made him a notorious figure in the neighborhood. Despite having no known criminal record, Scott was an odd and intimidating character with limited social aspirations. While Sonia was regaining control of her life and progressing steadily, some unsettling events began to occur. Caroline recounted that she received several mysterious phone calls with no one on the other end. Sonia also felt that she was being watched. One night in mid-September 1981, Caroline was visiting Sonia when they heard heavy footsteps outside the window. According to Caroline, Sonia did not know her neighbor Scott. While the subsequent investigation could not definitively link Scott to the phone calls or the strange occurrence in the garden, the later events strongly suggested his involvement. In the early hours of Thursday, October 15, 1981, Sonia dropped Sasha off at school and then returned home. It was then that Scott broke into her house. He managed to subdue her. The young mother, only 30 years old, fought valiantly against her attacker. Unfortunately, Scott overpowered her and soon assaulted her. Using Sonia's own stockings, he strangled her and fled the scene. Around midday, Caroline knocked on her friend's door multiple times. Worried by the lack of response, she opened the door and what she found would be etched into her memory forever. Just a few feet from the living room, she saw Sonia's partially clothed body on the floor, stockings tightly wrapped around her neck. Her purse was nearby, its contents scattered on the floor. Caroline got into her car and drove through the neighborhood, screaming for help, thinking the attacker might still be inside Sonia's house. Emergency services contacted the county sheriff's department, and Detective Williams was one of the first to arrive at the scene. Along with obvious signs of forced entry and struggle, the detective noted a significant detail on the victim's body, a broken ring fingernail, suggesting she had scratched her attacker. Initially, the detective could not identify the object around her neck, but later realized they were stockings. Detective Williams then interviewed Caroline, and immediately a suspect emerged. The detective quickly reached out to Michael Stone, informing him that he was the prime suspect without disclosing details. Unaware of the reason for police interest, Michael hurried to the station. He was told the terrible news upon arrival. Despite being cooperative, Michael's status as Sonia's ex-husband made him a natural suspect. However, Williams soon realized that pursuing this lead solely based on their relationship was unwise. News of the crime quickly spread through the community. Initially, residents of the picturesque coastal town were in disbelief, but soon a profound fear took hold. In a place where such a crime seemed unthinkable, trust among neighbors eroded. Detective Williams continued his investigation, which led him to focus on Sonia's neighbor, Scott. He approached Scott, who was injured, and claimed his injury was self-inflicted while cutting acrylic sheets in his backyard. Throughout the conversation, the officer noticed Scott's nervousness, stammering, and mumbling. These observations led the detective to consider Scott a potential suspect. These initial impressions were documented in an official report, which also included opinions gathered from interviewing various neighbors. When police spoke to Scott's parents, they learned he had given them a completely different explanation for his injury, claiming it resulted from a fight at school. To verify Scott's story, the police examined his workbench and the acrylic sheets, but found no bloodstains. When they interviewed one of his friends named Michelle, she initially said that Scott mentioned getting the scratch in an argument. Later, however, she confessed that Scott admitted being at the crime scene that morning. As authorities built their case against the prime suspect, Sonia's loved ones bid her a final farewell. The tragic actions of Scott left young Sasha bearing an unbearable burden. She suffered from night terrors and traumatic nightmares, often seeing herself as Little Red Riding Hood chased by a terrifying wolf. She would wake up screaming every night. On Monday, December 19, 1981, Scott was arrested at a traffic light for 2 outstanding speeding tickets. A detective from the Monterey County Sheriff's Office in California approached Scott's vehicle with a warrant for his DNA. Although Scott requested to speak with a lawyer, he denied him this right. This marked the beginning of several errors that negatively impacted the case. Once at the station, Scott was booked, fingerprinted, and photographed, with the police aiming to capture an image of the cut on his cheek. They proceeded to interrogate him about Sonia's murder, which was legally questionable. During the interrogation, Scott claimed he had an affair with Sonia and was at her house the day of the crime but denied any involvement in the fatal attack. Additionally, after typing up the interview reports, investigators destroyed the original case notes. With the interrogation report in hand, the deputy district attorney noted inconsistencies in Scott's account. Scott was subjected to a polygraph test and failed. At that time, DNA evidence as we know it today did not exist. The samples collected at the crime scene only allowed for blood type and other genetic markers to be identified. The tissue found under Sonia's broken nail revealed a blood type that did not match Michael's, her ex-husband. Soon after, Scott was charged with first-degree murder. Initially, Scott's trial was scheduled to begin on March 7, 1982, but repeated delays pushed it to November of the same year. One of the first to testify was a forensic serologist, an expert in biological fluids, who examined blood, semen, and urine from both the victim and the accused. He testified there was no evidence of sexual assault on Sonia's body. Next, the chief forensic pathologist from San Francisco and an expert in reconstructing sexual assault scenes stated that the evidence of such an assault did exist, particularly noting the bruises on Sonia's body. Michelle Wilson, Scott's close friend, testified for the prosecution. However, her testimony was confusing as she retracted her earlier statements, denying what she had allegedly said Scott had told her about that day. Michelle admitted that the passage of time had made her unsure about the events, leading to her being reprimanded during the following day's proceedings. On November 13, 1982, Scott's parents denied seeing a scratch on their son's face. Meanwhile, some witnesses placed Scott near Sonia's home, and the prosecution insisted the scratch on his face resulted from a struggle with Sonia. When the defense attorney requested additional time to review witness statements, the trial was further delayed, leaving the year 1982 to end without resolution. In April 1983, the defense moved to dismiss the murder charges against Scott, which the judge denied. However, the judge expressed doubts about Scott's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. On June 20, 1983, the judge criticized the investigators' procedures as unethical and illegal, pointing out that Scott was interrogated while in a psychologically weakened state. Consequently, he dismissed the murder charges against Scott. This was a significant blow to both the prosecutor and the police team. Scott seemed to have gotten away with it, but his relief was short-lived as he was brought to trial again in August 1983. As expected, he pleaded not guilty. 2 months later, the case was impacted once more by the initial haste of the police, who had interrogated Scott without honoring his request to speak with a lawyer. This time, a judge from the Montgomery County Superior Court invalidated the evidence obtained during Scott's arrest and interrogation, deeming it illegal. This allowed the defense to argue that their client had been harmed by what they called tainted evidence. During the hearing on November 17, 1983, neighbors provided varying accounts of Scott's whereabouts that day. An emergency physician from the local hospital testified that the laceration on Scott's face was consistent with a scratch from a fingernail. The credibility of the witnesses' reports negatively impacted the prosecution's case. Compounding the issue was the fact that the investigators' original notes had been destroyed. There was no way to verify what was said and what the officer had noted, making it impossible to contrast with the typewritten statements. The defense attorney pointed out discrepancies between the typewritten statements and the witnesses' testimonies on the stand. On November 24, 1983, Scott claimed he had been playing softball the day of the crime. Apparently, none of his softball teammates were contacted. 2 weeks later, when the jury failed to reach a unanimous verdict, the judge declared a mistrial. Scott, visibly relieved, spoke to the press outside the courthouse, stating that he was not surprised by the decision as he had always maintained his innocence and felt he had been falsely accused. Following the 2 judicial setbacks, the prosecutors dismissed the case, concluding that the available evidence was insufficient for a conviction. Scott then lived as a free man, finding work as a forklift operator for a well-known American retailer of tools and home goods. In 2007, he also secured employment as a school bus driver for the Salinas Unified School District. Simultaneously, he coached Little League Baseball, earning the affection of both the children and their parents. He continued living in the area, becoming a father and grandfather, and was never accused of another crime. In stark contrast, Michael, Sonia's ex-husband, became the focus of public suspicion in the absence of a convicted culprit. This scrutiny led Michael to leave the country and move to Canada. As Sasha grew older and fully understood the events, her anger grew, a rage fueled by the lack of answers and the fact that her mother's killer had never been caught. As a teenager, she turned to the detective in charge of the case, seeking to understand why the investigation wasn't reopened. Beyond emotional support and explanations related to bureaucracy and the law, he couldn't do much more for her. Resolving to ensure her mother's crime was not forgotten, Sasha channeled her energy into advocating for victims, dedicating herself to restorative justice, an approach that encourages offenders to take responsibility and recognize the harm they've caused through discussions with victims and community members. This work brought her immense satisfaction and allowed her to demonstrate great professionalism. In 2009, a significant event brought new hope for justice for Sonia. With the detective of the case retired, a new detective was assigned to the case. By then, investigators had a tool unavailable in the 1980s: DNA testing. The following year, a forensic expert from the California Department of Justice began testing old samples, including the blood found under Sonia's nails. The sample yielded a male DNA profile. The goal was to compare it with a sample of Scott's DNA, stored in small vials for nearly 30 years. However, at some point over the years, these vials had broken, spilling their contents into the envelope containing Sonia's nails. The material was so severely degraded that they could only generate a weak male profile from it. Although he believed Scott was the suspect, he wasn't entirely certain. To confirm this, they needed a new DNA sample from Scott. Lacking the necessary funds and resources, the county sheriff's office couldn't obtain it, and the case was shelved again in 2013. Many years passed without any progress until late 2020, when the county district attorney formed a task force focused on dozens of cold cases with available DNA evidence. A new detective was assigned to revisit Sonia's case. He dove into the old files and consulted past detectives to discuss the details. The deputy district attorney then collaborated with the detectives to re-examine all the evidence, deducing that some of it could now be tested with DNA technology that wasn't available when Scott was first tried. They discovered that Scott still lived and worked in the same county, and soon obtained a judge's order to collect his genetic material. The new DNA sample and the crime scene evidence were sent to the Department of Justice laboratory for analysis. The results revealed a conclusive match. Consequently, Scott, now 65 years old, was arrested at his home in Seaside and detained at the county jail on suspicion of murder. His bail was set at $1 million. The news shocked many residents, including students who had relied on his daily transportation services. The Salinas Unified School District faced scrutiny from anxious parents, understandably outraged that one of their bus drivers was allegedly involved in such a heinous crime. Swiftly, the district initiated the process to place Scott on administrative leave. Upon hearing of the arrest, Sasha, then 44 years old, was overwhelmed with happiness at the prospect of long-awaited justice. Scott's new trial began on January 30th, 2023. Although it was expected to last several weeks, it concluded in just 8 days, ample time for the defense to thoroughly cross-examine all witnesses. Scott's fate was sealed on Tuesday, February 7th, when, after nearly 6 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted him of first-degree murder. They also found true a special circumstance allegation that the crime occurred during the commission or attempted commission of a rape, making him eligible for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Victim impact statements included heartfelt words from Sasha and her father, Michael Stone, who spoke about how the crime had profoundly affected their lives. In April 2023, Sasha took the stage as an inspirational speaker at the National Crime Victims' Rights Week ceremony in Salinas, California. Speaking to a crowd that included many who had lost loved ones to violence, she painted a realistic picture of the impacts of trauma and violent crimes. Sasha emphasized that overcoming such devastation required developing inner strength, resilience, humility, compassion, grace, generosity, and forgiveness. She concluded her speech by paying special tribute to her mother, who remained her motivation for her work. 2 months later, on June 12, 2023, Michael Scott, 67, was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for the 1981 murder of 30-year-old Sonia Carmen Herock. Although the detectives never had the chance to meet Sonia, finding her killer more than 4 decades later meant a great deal to them. As the first detective in charge of the case, he had wrestled with the ghosts of not strictly adhering to the law, feeling a debt to Sasha, whose pain had always stayed with him in some way. Now, he was certain he had done everything possible to deliver the justice Sasha so fervently sought. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.
Can you tell me what a lie is?
It's not the truth.
Can you tell me what the truth is?
It's not a lie.
If I told you your mother was in the courtroom here today, would that be the truth?
No, so.
That would not be the truth. Why is that? Because she's not in the courtroom?
No, so.
Okay. Where is your mother?
Jail.
AJ,
So.
when is the last time that you saw your mother? Do you remember?
No, so.
Has it been a long time?
Yes, so.
That woman sitting right there between them. Have you ever seen her before?
Yes, so.
Who is that?
My mother.
Now you recognize your mother?
Yes, so.
AJ? AJ,
Yes, so.
give me your hand. All right.
Details about the early life of Amanda Lewis are scarce, but it is known that she was born in the early 1980s. Her mother, Brenda, raised her in Alabama, USA. At some point, Brenda married a man named Charles Burns, who became Amanda's stepfather and was actively involved in her upbringing. Amanda described herself as a restless, talkative, and sometimes problematic child who often struggled to follow rules. These traits might have contributed to her becoming a mother at the young age of 15. Unfortunately, her early motherhood ended in tragedy when her baby, Alex, died at 16 months old from a seizure disorder. Amanda recounted that on the day Alex passed away, she had left him sleeping while she took a bath. When she returned, she found him not breathing and rushed him to the emergency room, but it was too late. Later, while still in Alabama, Amanda entered what seemed to be a stable relationship, resulting in the birth of 2 children, Adriana Elaine Hutto and Andrew Jordan Hutto. Adriana was born on September 16, 1999, and his younger brother, Andrew, affectionately known as AJ, followed about a year later. Despite sharing the same last name, many sources indicate that the kids were half-brothers with different fathers. After the relationship ended, Amanda relocated with her children to a small community called Esto in Florida. Esto, a town of approximately 360 residents, had historically relied on the timber industry, and more recently, agriculture, and manufacturing. It also attracted tourists seeking natural beauty and tranquility. Amanda quickly adapted to her new environment, appreciating the peace and basic amenities it offered. She trained as a nursing assistant and secured a job at a nearby care and rehabilitation center, which provided her with stability. Despite the semblance of a stable life with a steady job, a simple home, and her 2 children, Amanda faced significant challenges. Her eldest daughter, Adriana, who was 7 at the time, was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. ADHD is a common neurodevelopmental disorder in children, characterized by difficulties in maintaining attention, impulsivity, and high levels of activity. Amanda found it challenging to form a close and calm relationship with Adriana, who required medication to manage her symptoms. The difficulties with Adriana contrasted with her relationship with AJ, which seemed to be less strained. She got along well with him as he was a calm child who could spend hours playing with his toy tractors. The contrast between the siblings' personalities was striking. Adriana required more attention both at home and at school, where the teachers were aware of her condition. However, this did not prevent Amanda from being called in on several occasions because her daughter had gotten into fights with other classmates, used foul language, or caused some sort of trouble. Additionally, Adriana occasionally wet her pants. Despite these setbacks, her teacher noted that her behavior was improving, and she was a smart girl who loved to read. At home, Adriana displayed the same behaviors, leading Amanda to frequently resort to time out as a form of punishment. This practice involves removing the misbehaving child from the area where the incident occurred, placing them in a separate spot, and leaving them alone to calm down and, if possible, reflect on their actions. However, as Amanda later admitted, not all moments were reflective. On some occasions, she used physical punishment to curb her daughter's misbehavior. At some point, Amanda met a new partner, a young man named Alan Carnley, who also came from Alabama. He had just come out of a failed relationship, from which he had 2 children. It appears that Alan's breakup was amicable, as there were no custody issues, and his children frequently visited and spent time with him and his new family. The events that unfolded in the summer of 2007 would change their lives forever. The family lived in a refurbished trailer on a spacious plot of land. That summer was particularly hot in Florida, so Alan decided to buy a pool to help beat the heat. The pool provided an opportunity for family fun, as his kids were also visiting at the time. The pool excited everyone, and the couple set strict rules for Amanda's younger children, prohibiting them from using it without an adult present. Amanda even removed the ladder to prevent the kids from accessing the pool unsupervised, storing it in the shed to eliminate any temptation. On Wednesday, August 8, 2007, early in the morning, Amanda returned home exhausted after a night shift at work. Eager to catch up on lost sleep, she decided to take a nap before starting the day's family activities, which included shopping for school supplies. That morning, the kids woke up and, according to Amanda, didn't want breakfast. After saying goodbye to her partner as he left for work, she left the kids watching cartoons on TV. One of Alan's sons, who was also in the house, was woken up by his father but was too sleepy to stay awake. He barely heard Adriana and AJ arguing before dozing off again. He heard them yelling, but it was nothing out of the ordinary, so he went back to sleep. According to Amanda's later account, she woke up sometime before noon and began tidying up the house before heading out with her children to shop for school supplies. Since they would have to wait a bit, she suggested that the kids go outside to play while she finished her chores. At one point, AJ came into the house to tell her that Adriana was in the pool. Initially, this didn't alarm her. She assumed her daughter was just playing near the pool. She instructed AJ to call Adriana and have both kids come back inside. Amanda then went back into the house, picked up her cell phone, and called her partner. She was talking to Alan while walking towards the window overlooking the pool. Everything changed when she saw AJ standing on a ladder at the edge of the pool, splashing his hands in the water. Amanda immediately ran outside, pulled her son away from the pool's edge, and was horrified to see Adriana floating face down in the water, her skin blue and lifeless. She described how she stretched her arms from the poolside, grabbed her daughter's feet, and pulled her out of the water. Once she had Adriana in her arms, she laid her on the grass, face up. The phone call with Alan was still active, and she screamed to him what had happened. Alan instructed her to call 911. As emergency personnel arrived, Amanda began performing CPR on Adriana, relying on her training as a nurse, although she admitted she had never had to use those skills in a real-life situation until then. The first responders on the scene were firefighters, with Unit Chief Charles taking over the resuscitation efforts as they awaited the arrival of medical and police teams. Their efforts seemed to yield some results. Adriana showed faint signs of life. Given the severity of Adriana's condition and the lack of advanced medical facilities in the small town of Esto, she was airlifted, accompanied by her mother, to the nearest hospital. Amid all the commotion, Alan's son woke up and, looking out the window, saw the frantic efforts to revive his stepsister. Before leaving, Amanda shouted to him to take care of his half-brother, AJ, and bring him inside. Later, the police contacted Amanda's children's grandparents to come and pick up AJ. Upon arriving at the hospital, the emergency doctor immediately took over Adriana's care, with a team working intensively to stabilize her and restore her vital signs. For a moment, it seemed they had succeeded. Adriana had a pulse. Tragically, after nearly an hour of effort, they lost the battle. Adriana, 7 years old, was pronounced dead at 5:05 that afternoon. Amanda later recounted that when she was told her daughter had passed, she felt her stomach churn. She was allowed to see Adriana one last time, kissing and hugging her, knowing it would be their final goodbye. In the eyes of the doctors, emergency staff, and police, it was a tragic accident, much like many others involving young children and bodies of water such as pools. While it was a tragic event, it could have easily marked the end of the story. However, miles away from the hospital where Adriana was declared deceased, her younger brother, AJ, left everyone stunned with a shocking account. Upon arriving at his grandparents' house, as they tried to calm him down, the little boy suddenly said that his mother had drowned Adriana. Naturally, upon hearing such a statement, Brenda and Charles, Amanda's mother and stepfather, were completely shocked and bewildered. The couple talked with the boy for a while, thinking he might have misunderstood something, but after asking him some questions and finding his answers convincing, they decided to take AJ to the police station to speak with the officers. With the grandparents' permission, AJ was questioned by the police, during which he stated that his mother had held his sister underwater as a punishment. According to the boy's account that morning, Adriana had taken a bottle of window cleaner and sprayed it all over the living room, the curtains, and the TV. AJ continued, saying that when his mother discovered what had happened, she became very angry, dragged her 7-year-old daughter to the pool, put her in it, and held her head under the water until she stopped moving. This story was repeated multiple times during 2 interviews with investigators and a third with a child expert. Although several aspects of the boy's story varied across the different interviews, the claim that his mother had submerged his sister's head underwater remained consistent. As a result, the authorities launched an investigation, starting with a thorough inspection of the house where the incident occurred. During this search, several things became evident. The bedroom shared by AJ and his sister was in disarray, with a broken bunk bed, complete disorganization, and a strong smell of urine. The word neglect echoed in the investigators' minds. Aside from the neglect, what shocked the detectives the most was the lack of toys in a room shared by two children. Naturally, Amanda was summoned to the police station to provide a statement and respond to her son's accusations. She appeared astonished and vehemently denied that her son's account had any truth to it. When confronted with the results of the house inspection, she explained that there were few toys in the children's room because she had thrown out the broken ones and donated the rest as a punishment for Adriana's bad behavior. As for the overwhelming smell of urine, she had no choice but to acknowledge it, explaining that Adriana often wet the bed. The investigators requested that Amanda undergo a polygraph test. She agreed immediately and successfully passed the test. However, her situation was further complicated by the autopsy results on her daughter's body. The post-mortem examinations confirmed that the cause of death was drowning, but they also revealed clear signs of assault on the girl's face. There were visible bruises that covered nearly the entire face and closely matched the size of an adult hand. With this evidence, on September 5, 2007, Amanda was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, facing the possibility of a life sentence or even the death penalty. The proceedings to prepare the case for trial began immediately. Although the authorities offered Amanda a plea deal, which would have required her to plead guilty to manslaughter in exchange for a 10-year sentence, she refused and chose to face trial for the charge against her. In the months leading up to the trial, investigators scrutinized all of AJ's statements to ensure that the young boy was not fabricating or confusing events. During interviews, they asked him questions such as what he was watching on TV that day and what other events occurred. He mentioned cartoons airing at that time, a helicopter flying overhead, and tree-cutting activities near his house to protect power lines. All these events were verified, showing that AJ remembered the day perfectly. Investigators also conducted interviews with family members, neighbors, co-workers, educators, and first responders who arrived at Amanda's house following the 911 call. The goal was to understand the family dynamics and ascertain the truth of what had happened. One of the interviewees was the doctor who had informed Amanda of Adriana's death. The doctor noted that Amanda's reaction to the tragic news was peculiar, as she showed no signs of grief. Instead, she asked where the vending machine was. With all the evidence gathered, the case went to trial on February 9, 2008. Over the next 4 days, Amanda's fate would be decided. Witnesses for both the prosecution and the defense took the stand. Authorities who responded to Amanda's emergency call in August 2007 described the dramatic scene they encountered, seeing Adriana clinging to life before she ultimately passed away. Testimonies were also heard from Alan and his children, who spoke about the family dynamics and details of the day in question. Amanda's boyfriend recounted what he heard while on the phone with Amanda during the incident. Alan's son had little to contribute as he had been asleep all morning and only emerged after the commotion began. Alan's daughter wasn't present on the day of the incident, but she narrated an earlier event at her Aunt Amanda's pool. She described Amanda trying to teach Adriana to swim despite the child's terror, at one point threatening to let her go. She also stated that she often supervised the children while Amanda slept, witnessing Adriana being punished by being confined to a room for an entire day. Testimonies from Amanda's co-workers were particularly damning. They recounted an instance when Amanda, furious, brought Adriana to the nursing home, repeatedly saying she would gladly take her life. These harsh words, spoken in front of the child, were seen as inappropriate and cruel by her colleagues. On that particular morning, Adriana had taken a marker from Amanda's car and scribbled all over the interior, even writing "loser" in one spot. The trial highlighted how Adriana's ADHD had prevented Amanda from forming a positive relationship with her, but two testimonies stood out, those of Amanda and her son, AJ. As we saw at the beginning, AJ, after 6 months of not seeing his mother, took a while to recognize her and cried when he did. During her testimony on the stand, Amanda acknowledged that her daughter's behavioral problems had made their relationship difficult. She described Adriana as extroverted and hyperactive, noting that she was very much like herself, stubborn and always by her side. Amanda claimed that Adriana sometimes displayed violent behavior, recalling an incident where the girl threatened her younger brother with a sharp kitchen tool. Amanda also admitted that she had once placed Adriana in a specialized institution for 6 days. She confessed to the court that she might not have loved her daughter as much as she should have. Amanda stated that she often punished Adriana by confining her to her room, the same smelly and dirty room that shocked the investigators. She also took away most of the toys as a punishment for leaving them scattered around. Amanda admitted that she occasionally lost her temper and would slap or spank Adriana, such as during the incident when Adriana had written on the car with a marker. Amanda described how Adriana had just begun learning to swim, could move her arms and legs a bit, but was terrified of putting her head underwater. Amanda insisted that she was not teaching Adriana to submerge her head. When asked if she knew how to swim, Amanda replied that she did. Sticking to her version of events, Amanda admitted that when AJ told her Adriana was in the pool, she didn't immediately check on her. Instead, she called her partner and only looked out the window later. She saw AJ at the pool's edge trying to reach Adriana, who was splashing in the water. That was when, according to her, she rushed to help but was already too late. Amanda's defense argued that Adriana's death was a tragic accident. They claimed that the girl had pushed her brother's toy cart to the pool's edge, climbed on it, and used a tray to scoop out insects from the water. When she leaned over, the edge of the inflatable pool gave way and Adriana fell in. During the trial, the prosecution questioned Amanda about how she had pulled Adriana out of the pool. Amanda admitted that she hadn't given her daughter breakfast or her medication that morning, claiming that Adriana had said she didn't feel well. It later emerged that neither child had eaten breakfast or lunch by the time of the incident around midday. Another critical piece of testimony came from the autopsy report on Adriana. The original forensic specialist did not testify as he had been dismissed for negligence in over 30 autopsies. Instead, the director of investigations at the medical examiner's office explained the autopsy process and findings, emphasizing the bruises on Adriana's face. Amanda's defense strongly challenged this testimony, questioning whether the marks were definitively from a hand. The expert had to admit that she couldn't be absolutely certain. Then came the pivotal moment in the trial, AJ's testimony. In a lengthy and exhausting interrogation for a 7-year-old, AJ recounted the events he had described many times before to investigators. This time, he included a drawing he had made during psychological support sessions, illustrating what had happened. After his long testimony, AJ faced cross-examination from Amanda's defense, who pressed him until he became visibly confused and tired, giving contradictory answers. Despite this, the prosecution deemed him a credible witness, supported by other significant details, such as the fact that Adriana was tall enough to stand in the pool and easily lift her head above the water. With these elements, the trial proceeded, culminating in a dramatic and crucial phase where the truth about Adriana's death hung in the balance. In the end, while the defense argued that Adriana's tragic death was a very unfortunate accident, The prosecution maintained that Amanda had maliciously punished her daughter. The prosecution argued that Amanda had reached her breaking point due to immense stress and exhaustion, having tried numerous ways to discipline her daughter, none of which seemed effective. In a moment of overwhelming frustration, Amanda snapped. After all testimonies concluded, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours, including lunch, before returning with a verdict. They found Amanda Lewis guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. The following month, during the sentencing hearing, the judge issued a life sentence plus an additional 30 years for aggravated child abuse. Amanda has attempted several appeals, none of which have been successful. She remains incarcerated at Lowell Correctional Institution. Reports following the trial's conclusion indicated that AJ was cared for by his grandparents in the months after the incident. However, once the judicial process was complete, AJ was reportedly put up for adoption. Since then, his life has been kept private. By 2024, AJ would be 24 years old, and we can only hope that his life has been significantly better than how it began. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.